everyone, welcome to the Money Date. Today I want to talk about a couple of tips of how you can start working on avoiding creating an additional debt in your overall financial life. Now, I know it's a fact of life that most of us, I say most, but let's say majority of people cannot live without having to incur debt. Now, I'm not a proponent of having no debt, and I'm also not a proponent of having a ton of debt. I kind of like to be in the middle, and I'll dive into discussing with you how I approach debt and where it's something that you can actually benefit from. But the majority of conversation today is about minimizing unnecessary debt. All right, I am Anna Shirgunina, and this is our weekly Money Date. Now, a couple of things for those of you who are watching live. Thanks so much for joining me. Appreciate you coming along every Wednesday afternoon. I hope you had a great holiday weekend and got some time to recharge. We certainly did. It was our first family little vacay with Liam, so learned quite a few things. I won't pack the entire house next time. But a couple of reminders. You guys know my usual tradition about making sure that you are allotted a little bit of time every week in your busy schedule to check in with yourself about your own personal finances. And then there are three things that I like to keep track of. Okay, number one is making sure you know where your expenses are. Number two, know how much income is coming in. And then number three, how are you tracking for your financial goals? Okay, those are the three things that you should be able to open up your phone, right? And be able to connect and have an idea where everything is at. Now, because we're doing this on the weekly basis, it just should become easier. Some of you don't really pay attention for the entire month, and that's where I think it creates more challenges for you, because too much time goes by between you really paying attention to what's going on in your finances. Okay, so check this out, give yourself a quick Money Date update, and move on and focus on the things that matter the most. But I hope finances are one of those. On to the conversation about why maybe perhaps accumulating debt is not the best strategy for your overall finances. Now, I mentioned earlier that I like the position of where you look at getting debt because it is something that's going to help you improve your situation. I love this concept where we differentiate between bad debt and good debt. And I kind of put the two categories side by side because I want to think about if I have debt. And so to give you examples, good debt would be a debt that will help you increase your current bottom line. So is it going to bring you profit? Is it going to allow you to expand? Versus a debt on this side, which I categorize as bad debt, mostly relates to consumer purchases, automobiles. For those of you who love cars, don't hate me, but that's not an asset to own. So therefore, debt associated with that asset does not qualify it to be a good debt. So how do you make a decision between those two is really simple. How getting into the debt for buying this particular thing or particular asset, right? Hopefully it's an asset, is going to improve your situation. When it comes down to making those decisions, you can kind of get yourself this clear-cut questions and ask yourself every time you're trying to make a purchase, right? Or you're trying to acquire something. Now, of course, huge obligations such as mortgages or student loan debts, right, or business debt isn't something that easy to make a decision on a spot, but you can still use the same outline and strategy. Now, something that I think we all are guilty of is called instant gratification. So on the path of minimizing, right, that debt, or maybe perhaps you already have a ton of debt that you're working on eliminating, you've got to work with the mindset first. And so that instant gratification, right, which comes from here and then it sort of ends up here, right? It's how you feel about something. We are all guilty of this. So why do you have to have this thing right away. And so you're starting that kind of a rat race where you're living for the moment, you're paying for it now, but then at the end of the day, you don't have enough money to pay it back at the end of the month, or at the end of 2 months, or whatever your timeline is. So you've satisfied your wanting it now, but you can't pay for it, or you can't afford it now. So we've got to break the cycle of you wanting that instant gratification. Now, it is beyond my skills and abilities to talk about this because it's more on a psychological level, but at the very minimal, because I'm an expert in numbers and personal finance, at the very minimal, all you can do is look at your spending, look at your income and compare the two. And it's really simple. Can you really afford this purchase, And if you can't afford it, what is going to happen if you don't get it until the next month? So that's how I would approach it, Very simply, without complicating anything. I think life is already complicated enough. So why bring more of that, okay? So let's start with kind of pausing that instant gratification, that we want, that feeling of I want to have this now, versus can I wait to have that? And can I pay for it in some other way and not a credit card or not a debt? And some things, and you can argue with me for sure, some things like, buying a home or buying, a large item may necessarily need for you to go into debt, but you better have a good plan of how you're going to pay it off, okay? I hope that does make sense. Okay, my tip number 2 is, all right, let's say you're working on this instant gratification, it takes all the time. I'm guilty of it too. So a lot of times my spending evolves around impulsive buying, and I come back to think about this, and I have this little rule that I've instituted years ago about if there's something I really want, I gotta think about it for 24 hours. And if in 24 hours I haven't stopped thinking about it, or if it's still in my mind and I keep coming back to it, then most likely it is something that I need to explore further. It doesn't mean that I go the next day and I buy it. It just means that I need to explore it further. If it's not on my mind after 24 hours, I've probably forgotten about it, then I just move on. Okay, so put that rule in place for yourself to give that a little bit of time, because time helps, So time helps with putting that space between you and something that you want. Okay, now once you sort of worked on this, clarifying this and mastering, this instant gratification, the now feeling, how about thinking through and working and figuring out whether or not you have a good emergency fund in place? Because a lot of times we go into debt, and I was talking to a client about it today, we go into debt because we don't have the resources we need to get that something that we want. Emergency fund a lot of times isn't necessarily used to give you satisfaction of whatever that is you need to buy, but sometimes debt accumulation isn't always caused by impulsive buying. It's caused by situations for which we're not prepared. So if we're not prepared for this situation, we go on and use debt in order to help us get out of there. And unfortunately, most of us are kind of in that situation. So to fix that, let's focus on building healthy emergency funds, okay? I call them curveball accounts. 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses is what I want to see for you to accumulate. So start working on how can you increase your emergency reserves, because there's going to be time when you're going to need the money. And what do? Instead of going and getting into debt, versus it's a small purchase like you can handle on your credit card, or it's a larger purchase, you actually use your money that you saved up in the savings account. Okay, now a couple more, but I think there are a couple more tips, but there really are around if you have debt, and it's kind of like this, balancing act that you're making, but you really got to have a plan for for if you've accumulated this debt, how are you going to pay it off? What are the interest rates on your balances? What are your balances? How much are you paying per month? And what is your plan to get rid of it? Some of you like the snowball plan where you pay a little bit every month, right? And it just kind of trickles from there. Some of you like to pay it off in chunks. It doesn't really matter. Whatever your strategy is, think about it and start putting it into play. Because and again, I'm not saying that debt is the evil and you shouldn't have that Dave Ramsey's, tune. I'm more about, if it's not helping you, then probably get rid of it. If it is helping you improve your situation, then learn how you can live with it. Have more income so that you can maintain that debt. That's the real key, my friends. Okay? Let me know if you have any questions about what we talked about. I'm going to kind of talk about this debt topic for the next few weeks in the month of September, because there's so many different areas and angles we can cover. So let me know if there's specific questions you want to discuss. Share this out. And don't forget, you do owe it to yourself to have a mini check-in money date with your own finances. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.